Aloha y'all, welcome to my channel, The Socially Awkward Chef. Today I've got a great, easy recipe for you. It is actually a no-cook Argentinian chimichurri sauce. There are only 7 ingredients and it can be made super quick. So let's get started. So the first thing that we've got is 1 bunch of flat leaf parsley. I went ahead and washed it and just plucked off the leaves. I'm actually going to set this aside for now while we cut up our other aromatics to go with our sauce. So the first thing that I have are 3 cloves of garlic. So I'm just going to mince them up. Just going to cut off the little ends. And this you want, again, to be minced. If you have a garlic press or a grater, you can go ahead and use that if you like. I'm just going to give this a good run through with my knife. I can see it is getting to about where I'd like it. This is coming along pretty well. Just going to take a few more passes through it. It does not need to be chopped to absolute crap, but the reason why I want it somewhere in between a fine chop and a mince is because we're putting it into a sauce that is not going to be cooked, so you don't want big chunks of garlic in there. So that's, I would say some would argue that that is a fine chop, but we're going to go with that. If you want to cut it down into even smaller pieces, absolutely go for it. I'm just going to put this into my bowl. Next up, I've got a shallot. Looks like 2 pieces, but it actually came like that. I just went ahead and peeled it. These are going to be finely chopped. So I'm going to take my hand, and I've got my knife. I'm just running it horizontally to kind of get these little folds here, and that's going to help getting it into our little fine chop. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my knife and go crossways. Oops. And I'm going to turn it, and we should have teeny tiny little squares. And I'm just going to run my knife across that bottom just a little bit. Again, we're looking for not big old pieces to go in this chimichurri. Okay. And that's about a fine chop there. into the bowl. Other half of the shallot. All right, that looks good. Into the big old bowl. And next up, I'm going to use flat leaf parsley. Again, that is one bunch. I went ahead and washed it and just picked the leaves. And all of it's going to go on the cutting board. And I'm going to gather it up into a tight little wad. Let's kind of get it underneath my hand. And then from there, we're going to cut across. And this just gives us a little bit more substance to work with as we're cutting. And also the reason why I decided to use or cut up this parsley last is because garlic and shallots and things like onions are fabulous, but they can also get your cutting board stinky. So parsley is great in that it neutralizes odors. So by cutting this up last, you are kind of helping defunkify your cutting board. Now this bunch of flat leaf parsley is also going to be a fine chop. I'm also kind of getting all the chopped parsley from the bottom and I'm moving it to the top just so everything gets chopped up evenly and nothing is getting mashed on the bottom. So as I'm cutting through, I do kind of scoop from the bottom, go on the top, and continue cutting. So a few more passes should be good. All right, that looks like about where I'd like it, which is about just so. Into the bowl. And then the next thing I've got is some fresh oregano. I'm going to use about 1.5 teaspoons of fresh oregano. If you don't have any available, you are totally fine to use dried. And you go ahead and use about 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon of dried oregano if you don't have fresh available. And the oregano, I'm also going to get that into a fine chop. Okay, and that looks about like that. And this is actually about 2 teaspoons. We're going to roll with it. All right, so let me just clean this up and come back and we will finish our chimichurri. Okay, so I've got the base of my chimichurri here. So that was the minced garlic, the shallot that was finely chopped, as well as our flat leaf parsley and our oregano. So that is all in one bowl. The next thing that we're going to add to it is some red wine vinegar. So I'm going to put in about 3 to 4 tablespoons. Olive oil, extra virgin. We're going to start off with about 1/2 cup, and you can go up to about 3/4 cup. I highly encourage eyeballing things. Next up, we've got some crushed red pepper flakes. So you can do 1/2 teaspoon up to a teaspoon. It just totally depends on how spicy you'd like things. I like it spicy, so I'm going to put in about a teaspoon. Same thing for salt. I've got a teaspoon going in. And freshly ground black pepper, about 1/2 teaspoon. I'm going to give this a stir. And from here, I'm going to take a look and see how this comes together. So at this particular point, it looks like I'm going to need more oil. So no worries. I'm just going to add more oil. And at the end of this video, I'll show you kind of the look and the consistency that you want to look out for. Because you don't want this super soupy, and you don't want it so dry that you can't put it on all the yummy things that you can put this wonderful chimichurri on. And speaking of which, this is fantastic on beef, on chicken, even some nice fish. If you don't eat meat, it's great on tofu, and I also really enjoy it on things like potatoes and grilled veggies. So this really is such a great all-purpose sauce, and I would say something that you should definitely keep in your culinary arsenal. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a taste and see what is in there that needs adjusting, if anything. That actually tastes pretty good. I'm going to add maybe just a couple more pinches of salt, and just a little bit more of the red wine vinegar. And actually a little bit more of that olive oil, because all the herbs and the shallots and garlic are really going to infuse into that oil. So you really want to have that in there. So it's not really going to be a super oily product. It's just going to have amazing flavor. But again, you don't want it swimming in olive oil. So a good rule of thumb is when you make your batch, and you of course taste it, adjust your seasonings, just kind of do that, and make sure that the oil is at least covering the top of your chimichurri sauce, which this is doing. Let's see if you can see that a little closer. And as far as consistency, we're looking at something like this. And this recipe is great because it has a lot of wiggle room. If you want it, you know, more spicy, or you want a little bit more vinegary. I mean, it's balanced as is, but it's not like baking where it has to be a quarter cup of this and la 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 la. You kind of get it. So this is actually done. It's ready to go. I'm actually going to put this in the fridge and let it hang out for about a half an hour until I get our dinner going, which this is going to be paired with some skirt steak. I've also got some potatoes and some Brussels sprouts that I'm going to roast off. So this, I hope you enjoyed this recipe. It is super quick, super easy. I mean, we made it in real time. So I hope y'all enjoy this recipe. Until we eat again, aloha y'all.